Picture this. A grand banquet hall in Hyderabad. Music, color, laughter. The kind of wedding celebration that sets social media on fire.
Ah, sounds extravagant.
It was. Arjun Reddy, a rising tech star, and Meghna Kapoor, a fashion designer, were the picture-perfect couple. Their smiles, pure joy.
The perfect fairy tale start.
Exactly. But fast forward a few weeks and the fairy tale facade crumbles. The honeymoon suite turns into a nightmare.
Oh, that's a sharp turn. What happened?
A horrifying crime.
Hmm.
The happy whispers replaced by a deafening silence. A life brutally cut short.
Chilling. The contrast is just striking, you know. The dazzling surface and the dark reality underneath.
Exactly. And that's what we're diving deep into today. How did this romance descend into a gruesome crime?
To understand that, we need to peel back the layers, uncover the secrets simmering beneath the surface of this seemingly perfect couple.
Okay, so let's get into it. This is CrimePod Castle's Twisted Love series, and today we're unpacking the Hyderabad Honeymoon Horror, our central figures, Arjun and Meghna. But who were they beyond the smiles and designer outfits?
Let's start with Arjun. Successful software engineer, seemed to have it all. But scratch a little deeper, and a darker picture emerges.
Yeah, there were some unsettling discoveries after the crime. What was going on in Arjun's life?
Well, our tech-savvy groom had a secret life. A dangerous gambling addiction, deep in debt, owed money to some dangerous people.
Wow, that's a lot to hide from your partner. No wonder there were cracks in this seemingly perfect relationship.
Exactly, and those cracks widened when Meghna found out another truth. Arjun had been secretly engaged before, not just a fling, a serious relationship erased from the narrative.
Serious breach of trust. Discovering your partner has a hidden past. Must have been emotionally turbulent for Meghna.
Devastating. Betrayal, anger, confusion, like her world was shaken.
And it all came to a head during their honeymoon, right?
Yes. That idyllic escape to a luxury resort became a crucible. Witnesses reported tense arguments, hushed whispers of anger from their suite. Something was terribly wrong.
So not just newlywed jitters, the tension was palpable.
Not at all. A relationship imploding under deceit and desperation. And on the night of May 28th, things took a horrifying turn.
What happened?
Guests reported sounds of a violent struggle from their room, shouting, crashing glass, fear in the air, then an eerie silence.
A silence that speaks volumes, like the air itself held its breath.
Exactly, and when hotel staff entered the suite the next morning, utter devastation. Meghna's lifeless body, overturned furniture, shattered glass. The honeymoon suite, a crime scene.
Chilling. How quickly love can turn to violence. And there was a note, wasn't there?
Yes, in Meghna's hand. Brief, chilling, in Arjun's handwriting. You forced me to do this.
Sends chills down my spine. A haunting echo of the events and a desperate attempt to shift blame.
It's a powerful example of how a perpetrator manipulates the narrative. We'll delve deeper into the psychology in part 2, but for now, let's shift to the investigation.
Okay, so we have a crime scene, a missing husband, and a note raising more questions than answers. What were the initial steps?
Well, given the high-profile nature, the police launched a full-scale investigation. The honeymoon suite became a focal point, forensics combing through everything.
And Arjun. What happened after he fled?
Disappeared. Vanished. Phone off, bank accounts untouched. Became a ghost, leaving unanswered questions.
He had a head start. But surely the police had leads. You don't just vanish.
They did, starting with those closest to the couple. Family, friends, colleagues, anyone who might have known what was going on.
And did those interviews reveal anything about their relationship? Any missed warning signs?
Well, that's where things get really interesting, and that's where we'll pick up in part 2. We'll dive deeper into the investigation, the evidence, the manhunt.
I'm already hooked. The Hyderabad Honeymoon Horror. A case that started with dazzling smiles and ended in unspeakable tragedy. Join us for part 2 as we unpack this chilling tale of love, deceit, and deadly consequences.
Welcome back to CrimePod Castle's Twisted Love series. Last time we left off with that honeymoon suite, now a crime scene, and Arjun vanished. More questions than answers, really.
It's like the end of Act 1, right? Curtain falls, audience on the edge of their seats, dying to know what happens next.
Exactly. Act 2 of this tragedy starts with the police, piecing together the puzzle of Arjun and Meghna's relationship. Remember those interviews with family and friends? They were key.
Right. Sometimes the people closest to us, they see the cracks we miss. What came out of those interviews?
A picture of a relationship built on shaky ground, really. Turns out, behind the public affection, the Instagram perfect moments, there was a growing divide between Arjun and Meghna.
So those whispers of arguments, back at the resort, that wasn't just an isolated thing.
No, not at all. Friends revealed they'd been clashing for months. Arguments, more heated, more frequent. Meghna, she was known for being cheerful, but she'd become withdrawn, anxious.
Heartbreaking. This seemingly perfect couple, underneath all that tension and unhappiness. What was at the root of it all?
Money, for one. Meghna, successful fashion designer, financially independent. Arjun, weighed down by those gambling debts, struggling to keep up. That difference created a breeding ground for resentment.
Opposites attract, right. But then those differences, instead of working together, they become a source of friction. But it wasn't just about money, was it? Hidden engagements, a whole secret life fueled by addiction.
You're right, it was a web of deceit, eating away at the core of their relationship. Finding out about Arjun's previous engagement, that was devastating for Meghna's trust.
Imagine that. Discovering the person you love has this whole hidden past, a whole chapter of their life kept secret, like you never really knew them.
And that realization, it can shatter you. Especially after a whirlwind romance, a lavish wedding, like the rug's pulled out and you're left trying to make sense of it all.
And for Meghna, that search for answers ended tragically. But back to Arjun. He's on the run, trying to escape. What were the police doing to find him?
Full-scale manhunt. Think of it like casting a wide net. Surveillance footage, phone records, financial transactions, anything that might give a clue. They also put pressure on his associates, hoping someone would crack.
What about the forensic evidence from the crime scene? That had to offer some insights, right? Science meets investigation.
Absolutely. The forensic team, they worked nonstop. Fingerprints, DNA, every little detail, like a giant jigsaw puzzle, each piece getting them closer to the truth.
And those pieces started falling into place quickly, didn't they? What did the forensic analysis reveal?
Well, first, it confirmed that Meghna's death was no accident. The evidence, a violent struggle, a fight for her life.
Chilling to think about those final moments. The terror she must have felt.
And the forensics didn't just tell the story of her death, they pointed to the killer. Arjun's fingerprints on the weapon, his DNA under her nails. Science was undeniable.
So while he was trying to disappear, the evidence was piling up against him, walls closing in.
Exactly. And as the net tightened, Arjun slipped up. He contacted his family.
Classic, isn't it? The fugitive who can't resist reaching out even though it puts them in danger.
And that risk, it led to his downfall. The police, they were monitoring his family's communications, traced the call, found his hiding place.
So after days on the run, the game was over. What happened when they caught him?
It was quick, dramatic. Arjun, cornered, didn't put up much of a fight. He was taken into custody back to Hyderabad to face the music. The chase was over, but the story, far from finished.
And that's what we'll pick up in part 3. The trial, the verdict, and the questions that still linger around this tragic case. Back again for the final part of CrimePod Castle's twisted love series. We've gone from that lavish wedding to a deadly honeymoon to a desperate escape, and now the trial.
This trial, it wasn't just about the law, it was a public reckoning. The whole nation was glued to this story of Arjun and Meghna, watching as their romance unfolded in the courtroom.
Like one of those true crime documentaries you can't turn off.
Yeah.
You know the basics, but you're still hooked, waiting to see how it all ends.
Exactly. And the drama, it wasn't just in the courtroom. Public opinion, it was split right down the middle. Some saw Arjun as this cold-blooded killer driven by greed. Others, they held on to that image of a heartbroken man who just made a terrible mistake.
It's that age-old question, right? Can love really turn that dark? Can someone who says they love you, can they actually be capable like that kind of violence?
Those are the questions the jury had to wrestle with, weighing the evidence, listening to both sides, prosecution and defense.
Let's break those arguments down. What was the prosecution's strategy? How did they build their case against Arjun?
Premeditation, that was their foundation. They argued Arjun, with those debts piling up, the fear of being exposed, he planned Meghna's murder.
So not a crime of passion, not something in the heat of the moment, fueled by rage.
The prosecution, they shut that narrative down hard. They pointed to the evidence, the planned cover-up, trying to flee the country, that note, all signs of a calculated act.
Like they were saying, look deeper. This wasn't a lapse in judgment. This was deliberate. And he had a motive.
Exactly. And they presented a strong case. Forensic evidence, financial records, witness testimonies. They painted a picture of a man driven to desperate measures.
What about the defense? What was their counter-argument?
They tried to make Arjun human. Show him as a man full of regret, a man who never wanted things to go that far. They said the killing was a tragic outcome of an argument, impulsive in a blind rage.
So pushing that crime of passion angle, hoping for some sympathy from the jury?
Yes, but the prosecution pushed back hard. highlighting the premeditation, the financial motive. They argued Arjun chose violence as a solution instead of facing the consequences.
It's a powerful point, isn't it? We're responsible for our choices, even when we're under pressure.
And in the end, the jury agreed. After days, they reached a verdict. Guilty of first-degree murder.
A verdict that brings closure, but not necessarily justice. A life is lost, and no legal decision can bring Meghna back or heal the pain.
That's the harsh reality of these cases. The system gives a verdict, but it can't fix what's broken.
This case, it raises so many questions. Love, trust, the darkness inside us. It reminds us that sometimes the fairy tale hides a much darker truth.
It underscores the need to be aware, to be vigilant, to communicate openly in our relationships, to look beyond the surface, to deal with problems head-on, to ask for help when we need it.
This has been heavy, but important. A deep dive into a case that shook a nation and made us face some uncomfortable truths. But as we wrap up this Twisted Love episode, I want to leave our listeners with hope. There is help out there for those struggling in silence. There are people who care.
If you or someone you know is facing relationship problems, any kind of abuse, please reach out. There are organizations dedicated to helping, to guiding. You don't have to face this alone.
And remember, this case, as tragic as it is, can be a chance for change. To spark conversations, raise awareness, and inspire us to build a world where love doesn't lead to death, where everyone feels safe and valued.
Thank you for joining us on this journey through the Hyderabad Honeymoon Horror. We hope this deep dive helped you understand this complex case and encouraged you to have these vital conversations.
Don't forget to follow and subscribe to CrimePod Castle and our YouTube channel for more deep dives into true crime. Until next time, stay curious, stay safe, and stay vigilant.